Hey everyone, Susan with Little Fur Fleece, and today I'm here with another tutorial. We're going to make a cozy cavern. This is the cavern that I'm going to show you how I made. It also comes with a potty pet. And these caverns are made in the exact fashion that I make my animal houses. This just doesn't have any ears or anything attached to it. After the video, I will be posting this cavern for sale in my Etsy shop, along with the house that I made in the last tutorial that had the bats on the roof. And this is said house. And this will also come with a potty pad. In the description of this video, I will have all of the measurements for the cavern. And that way, if you want to try and make your own, you certainly can. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. Hey everybody. Today I'm going to show you how I make my cozy cavern, and I do have my pattern set out in front of me. This is just a little too big, to be fair. This is for the fleece, and then this is for the foam. It ends up being just a little bit too big right around the top. So those are the arches for the front and the back, and then I made my little cabin hole. Then the bottom is a 10 by 10. This is for the foam, and this is for the foam. And then because I forget everything, I've written on my fleece piece what my measurements should be. So the foam up and over is going to be 22.5 by 10. And then the bottom is the 10 by 10. And then I've got my fleece up and over, I say 26.5 by 13. And then the bottom I do 13. And this is my 13. What I do with this is I use this on the fold for the up and over, and it seems to work out pretty good. It's a little bit too long, but it's fine. So let's get started with our foam first. After I cut out my foam pieces, I like to get the U-haul finished or cut. I'm going to go ahead and cut one pad. I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 pieces of U-haul for one pad. This fleece is not what I call directional. I've got the butterflies flying in all different directions. So if I make it go this way or I make it go that way, it's not going to be that noticeable. So we're going to start out with our up and over. This piece will be for the bottom of the house. We'll need 2 of these, one for the front, one for the back. And then finally we need our square for our potty pad. We've got those pieces. Now we're going to cut out the solid color. The bottom of this house is going to be just a little shade darker because I ran out of the lilac color. Once everything's cut out, I try and organize it by piece. So we've got our floor, we've got our front and back, and our up and over, and then our potty pad is behind us. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the body. We're going to lay down our solid color. Right side is facing the table, bad side facing up. Try and center your foam as best as you can, just as long as you've got enough on each area edge to sew the seams. Then you lay down your pattern piece, right side facing up. Grab our pins, and we're going to pin this in place before we baste stitch it. With the front and back, I make sure the pattern that I choose for the front is going to look okay with a hole in it. Is that ridiculous or what? I don't think so. So this one has a lot of butterflies and flowers right in the middle. And then this one has some of the gray butterflies and such in the middle. So I think I'm going to use this one for the front. And it's perfect because they're right sides together. And we're going to need the right sides together. Then we put our foam down. Pull both sides over and clip it to keep it in place when you're sewing the outline for the hole. And we flip it back over. I put my pattern here. And I usually measure, make sure it's the same distance on each side and then the same distance from the bottom to the top. It doesn't have to be perfect, but when we top stitch it, we want to make sure that we have enough room between here and up here to top stitch that and around. All right, that piece is done. And here we're going to take good side facing down, place your foam, pattern, good side facing up, and then pin. Pinning this is going to keep everything in place while you baste stitch it, and then the baste stitching keeps everything in place while you sew it together. And then we've got our bottom piece, so we've got our foam, and then bad side facing up, center as best you can, right side facing up, and pin. And then our potty pad. Right side facing up, right side facing down of the solid. And then I like to flip it over. If you've seen my other videos, one of them I say the reason why is because I like to get all of the wrinkles out. As with all of my projects, I typically will start out with the potty pad first and then do the basting stitch on all of the items. To eliminate bulk when turning this right side out, I usually cut the U-haul down below the sew line. It makes a little bit of a difference when I hand stitch it closed. And there we have it. Potty pad all done. Next, we're going to sew around our outline for the front of the cavern, and then we'll flip it inside out or right side out after we cut through the hole, of course. When you do this, don't make the mistake that I did the very first time I made one of these or anything that had it folded under. This is pretty long, so if you don't unfold it, you're going to sew right through it and it's not going to be fun. When you're going around the curve, go slow and try very hard not to pull too hard. It depends on your machine, but I use a walking foot, which helps to pull both ends, the top and the bottom. I do still have to tug on my fabric, or in this case, because the foam is in there, I have to tug on that to get it through. If you pull too hard, you'll break a needle. Don't ask me how I know that, I just do. But also you want to go slow to make sure you're following the line and you're not pulling on the material to make the outline wonky, if that makes sense. Now we're going to cut this hole, and I have found the easiest way to do that is to fold it in half, grab a very sharp pair of scissors, and just cut the middle. And as you can see, that's all I did. And then I will cut it to the stitching. Do not cut through what you just sewed. And then as close as you can, get to the stitching. Just very slowly cut that out while keeping your hand on there so you're not cutting the other side of the fabric other than what you want out of there. I will tidy up these corners just a little bit. So we're going to take our solid and flip it over. And then I always start pinning. I push it as much to the seam as I can to get it like in the middle of that foam. And then I'll take a pin and put it in there. And I'll keep pulling and pinning all the way around. There we have all the pins in place, and we're ready to baste stitch around here. Just to give you kind of a heads up, when I fold this back, you can see just how much area we have to work with down here. There's maybe 1.5 inches of foam, a little bit more than 1.5 inches at the top. So when we make our top stitch that goes around the hole, we won't have a lot of real estate, basically. Just a heads up. We're going to top stitch this first, and then we'll go ahead and do all the other pieces, and I'll just kind of fast forward through all of that. Our next step is to top stitch, and since I started making these, I use the little squiggly stitch. You don't have to. It takes more time even, but I like it. It looks good. Let me show you. Go to mode 3 and then number 11, and then you see right there it's got the little, and then it'll do the squiggly stitch. Now we talked about how much room we have here and up at the top, so we're going to try and go right in the middle. And then I usually start about 1 inch in from the edge of the foam and then go all the way around. Here we are. That's that one. Then we're going to do the same thing to the back panel and the body. Bottom, what I do is I just put a X here, or plus sign, because it's not visible on the outside unless you flip it over. I mean, the whole house. I forgot to mention for this one, I usually will start about maybe 1.25 inches, because we've got more real estate to work with. Measure from the back of the foam here to the needle 1.5 inches, from the edge of the foam here to the needle 1.5 inches. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's the back, and the animals don't care. The next part is putting front piece on. Essentially, you're going to have the right side on the inside and then the right side facing the right side. I always start at one corner, so one corner of the front, and then I match it up to the corner over here and pin. Now sometimes I don't get it right the first time, so I have to redo it, but little hack, little cheat. You look for the foam here and the foam over here. And obviously they are not lining up. This one here is about 1/2 inch too far to the right. So unpin that. All right, so we've got that one. We're going to kind of walk this around, holding it, not pinning yet. Bring it to the other side, and we're going to match up those corners. And in case you can't tell, this can get a little fiddly. The reason I do the front piece first is because it's so wishy-washy that I want to get it out of the way. You can do whichever one you want to first. It's your project. And then once I've got those two corners lined up to my satisfaction, I'll start walking everything around. And as you can see how much longer this is, and you're just going to shove it in there, and you're going to try and line up your foams together, not together, but so they're kind of touching, because you're not going to sew through the foam. You're only going to sew the fabric. I I do want to emphasize that we are not sewing through the foam here. We're sewing just the fleece, and I get my presser foot up close and personal with the foam so that my needle is just to the right of the foam, but it's only on fleece. Your machine may be different. Mine, because I have that walking foot, I can tell you exactly where I need to be. This little point on my walking foot needs to be right up against the piece of the foam. You'll see me occasionally going like this because I'm checking to make sure that I'm not sewing the foam underneath, so the other side. Just a little food for thought. All right, so we have the front and the back sewn. So there's the front, there's the back. I'm going to sew the bottom on. So we're going to start it with the front panel. We're going to pin all along here, and then we're going to sew it. So I stopped here because I kind of want to show you how far you're going to sew up to. And as you can see right here, this is where the seam is from sewing the front on. And you want to sew at least up to that seam. The way I can tell is I've got that little V of the part where I didn't sew. And then there's the seam underneath. So you can kind of tell when your needle gets in there. You don't want to break your needle. Please don't do that. But you want to sew at least up to that seam. Otherwise, you're going to have a hole in your corner. And then you do want to back stitch just to keep that reinforced. Just wanted to share that. What we're going to do is we're going to trim off the excess, and then I'm going to finish up and sew the rest of the bottom on, so the other three sides. Okay, so I stopped again to just kind of show you this is our final seam that we want to connect to. That way you don't leave a hole in one of the corners. So you just want to kind of go slow because there's a lot of fabric underneath there. You can see where you stitched before and then just back stitch. And there we are. So what I do is I usually will put my hand in here and I'll poke. As you can see, it's not going through. We're going to cut that off. And then we are finished. Well, we're finished sewing. So as most of you know, when I finish a project, I'm always going to lint roll everything. I start with the seams first, and then once the seams are clean to my satisfaction, then I will go ahead and do the rest of the body. And now we're going to put our hand in here, grab the back wall. I usually grab it right around the seam here, and then just pull. Be careful. Right, we're going to pop a corner, pop a corner, pop a corner, pop a corner. And just kind of run your hand along each seam just to push it out. We made a cavern. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. You have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.